So we have a major problem here in the United States, and President Biden does not want to admit it. And honestly, President Biden will not take responsibility for this, even though many are saying that this is a massive failure. Now, I'm going to address what's going on, what President Biden is struggling with, why he will not take full responsibility, and what is going to happen in the near future. All I ask is one thing, takes 2 seconds. Go ahead, hit that like button if you enjoy these daily updates. And now, let's begin. So as the President of the United States, President Biden is being blamed for many things, as he should be. Not saying it's all his fault, but as the leader, it is your responsibility to take that blame, to take wins, take losses. It's all on you. Well, here's what's happening. And this is why many are saying this is a threat, and President Biden is a threat to the American people. Let me show you this. Right here, this is a report from Fox News. It says Border Patrol encounters 17 people on terror watch list at southern border in November. Okay, 17 people in November. November alone. Just to give you an idea, there have been 30 people, 30 known people on this terrorist watch list that have tried to come into the United States in fiscal year 2024. The year started in October. So it's October, November. 30 people have attempted to enter the United States, some of which probably did get into the United States. 30 people in 2 months. That is an insanely high number. Last year, just to give you an idea, in 2023, we saw a record 169 terror watch list encounters at the southern border. President Biden sees these numbers. He understands what is happening. However, he's turning his head and he will not take responsibility for this. This is scary. This is why experts say we have a problem. But it is not just experts. It is also other world leaders. For example, look at this. This is according to the Associated Press. It says Mexico's president is willing to help with border migrant crush, but wants U.S. to open talks with Cuba. Also wants the United States to do a little bit more with Venezuela. And I will explain what's going on here. But one thing I can tell you is that the United States is trying to do certain things. What they are doing, and this is a lot of it's coming from the Biden administration down, is they're closing railroad crossings. They're redistributing border patrol agents from one location to another, from certain checkpoints. Now they're going into processing to try to get people through the whole process and out. It is scary. And so one of the things that the Biden administration is looking at is additional funding. But while they're looking at additional funding to get more agents in, the problem is many people have left. The amount of Border Patrol agents that have left this field is insane. People do not want to do this because they're being overworked, underpaid. This is a problem. Now, one of the things that the United States and Mexico are going to be discussing is opening talks with Cuba, but also Venezuela. Something that President Biden is now really keen to. He really likes this idea of, instead of securing the U.S. southern border with Mexico, how about Mexico secures their southern border with Venezuela? That is what they're discussing at this time. That Mexico would limit the amount of people that come into Mexico from Venezuela, because that's where the majority of the people coming into the United States are coming from, is Venezuela. Well, how does the United States impact Venezuela? Well, we put sanctions on Venezuela for multiple reasons. Some of it is human rights. Some of it is because of banning certain officials from government or from running for government positions. Right? There's a lot of things here. So the United States has sanctioned Venezuela. We've done some trading just recently for prisoners. So there's some issues there as well. But again, President Biden is not looking at securing our border. He's looking at kind of closing things down temporarily, okay, limiting the amount of people coming in. But all that's doing is backing people up in Mexico. And now the Mexican president is like, hey, we need some additional help as well, because what you're doing is impacting us. So we will see what happens there. But while all this stuff is happening, the United States and states here in the U.S. are trying to figure out ways to accommodate these people. Well, Texas has found a way to help. Texas is deciding they're just going to fly immigrants from Texas to Chicago. That's their plan. Instead of busing people in, they're not just going to bus them in, they were going to fly them directly into Chicago so that they can go and live there. Because the Chicago mayor says, we're open, right? Everything's good. They doesn't understand why there's a problem in Texas. Again, things are going to be interesting. But just since last year, okay, what we have seen is that Texas has bused over 80,000 immigrants to Democratic-led cities across the United States. Two of the main ones, Chicago, New York. Those are the two. Now, why does this matter? This matters because what we are seeing is New York is pushing back. We are hearing reports that New York's migrant families are urging the mayor to simply revoke and get rid of a 60-day shelter limit, because 60 days is not enough. They don't have enough time to go and find a place to live, right? Get a job, get the work permit that they need. Well, some of these states, they thought they had this problem solved. What they were doing is states thought a fast work permit would solve all their migrant problems. However, it hasn't. One of the reasons why a fast work permit just isn't working is because many of the people that are applying, for one, it takes so long. Think about it. Let's say 80,000 people, or let's just say 10,000 people come into a city and they're trying to apply for a work permit. Just 10,000 people. Texas bussed in over 80,000 to Democratic-led cities. So just, let's say 10,000 people want to apply for a work permit, an asylum work permit. Guess what? Whoever's processing those work permits will now be overloaded. According to reports, some people are waiting more than a year in order to get a work permit, a fast work permit. So you think about it. If people are waiting more than a year, this means that those people are still on government assistance. They're still trying to live in a shelter, whether it's an individual or a family. It's turning into a massive problem. But President Biden will not take responsibility for this. President Biden says, well, it's on you. We've provided these states and these cities with additional funding over the past 3 years. Where did that funding go? Guess what? The funding to help immigrants, that's not part of it. That is not part of the COVID funding that states got as part of a $350 billion plan that was passed during the whole pandemic years. So what President Biden has said and the Biden administration has said is, why aren't states helping? States aren't helping because they don't have the funding. Many states are actually seeing that they're losing money. In the past year and moving forward, states are expecting that they're going to lose money. They're not going to have a surplus. They're going to be in a deficit. So we'll see what happens there. Now, one of the things that I just want to share with you is that there's a lot of people pressing President Biden for some change. One of which is Speaker Mike Johnson. He's urging President Biden to unleash executive actions on border security. However, President Biden does not want to do that because, according to reports, the White House does not believe we really have a border security problem. What they think we have is that right now, yes, there are people wanting to come into the United States. That's not a problem. The problem is we do not have enough Border Patrol agents to process these people quickly enough. That's why there's a big surge of people. No, not quite. The reason there's such a surge in people is because everyone's coming in from Venezuela, from southern Mexico, Southern America, South America, Mexico, whatever, coming through and trying to get a better life. Because yes, other countries are struggling. The United States is doing quite well compared to what many other countries in South America are doing. So that's one of the reasons why we are getting more people up into the United States. Now, here's what we do know. As far as a border security deal between Congress, between the Republicans and the Democrats, well, good news. A deal on U.S. border policy is closer than it seems. So that's the good news. Now, as far as what's going to be in it, even right now, people are speculating. This article that I just showed you, this is actually from December 20th. Now, over the past 4 days, because today is December 24th, but over the past 4 days, we've seen a handful of changes. And we've seen these changes because of what is happening in other countries, like in Israel, like in Ukraine, what the attacks going on in the Red Sea, and potentially, growing into the Mediterranean Sea. There's a lot of problems here. The United States and President Biden cannot afford more problems. So one of the things that they're looking at is how can we shore up security here in the U.S.? Well, according to Democrats, they are worried that President Biden is willing to accept any deal to ensure funding go to Ukraine so that Russia does not win that war. But the problem right now might be that President Biden is trying to transfer the responsibility onto other people. For instance, President Biden was thinking about taking Russian assets, selling them off, using that potentially $300 billion and funding Ukraine. He is pushing the responsibility over to Russia to solve that problem with Ukraine. Could it work? Possibly. Is Russia going to go for it? Absolutely not. The same goes for the southern border. And I'm not talking about the United States and Mexico border. I'm talking about Mexico and Venezuela. President Biden is trying to push the responsibility over to the Mexican president, Obrador. And if they do, and that works out, great. But is Mexico really going for it? Well, they're discussing it. But if Mexico does this and limits people into Mexico, well, they're saying they need additional help, which means there's probably additional funding. So we're going to see what happens moving forward, but all I can tell you is we do have a problem, and right now our leader, President Biden, is really nowhere to be found and not taking responsibility for this massive failure. So as soon as we get more information, I promise I'll fill you in on all the latest news and updates. But that is what we know as of today. So again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.